The night around the border station of the Empire was quiet. The kind of silence that made the officers uneasy. Space stretched endlessly beyond the viewports, dark and endless, broken only by the faint light of distant stars. Commander Ryan sat at his post, staring at the flickering holographic map of nearby systems. It had been years since anything unusual had happened in this sector. Years of boring patrols, routine checks, and endless reports. The Empire ruled with an iron hand, and nothing dared to challenge it. But that night something changed. The junior scanner officer, a thin young alien with 4 nervous eyes, leaned forward and frowned. He tapped his console once, then twice. The system showed an unknown reading far beyond the range of normal traffic. He thought it was an error, maybe a reflection or cosmic interference. But when he ran the scan again, the signal came back stronger. "Commander," he said quietly, "there's something out there." Ryan didn't even look up at first. He had heard those words before. Ghost signals, glitches, imaginary ships. But something in the officer's trembling voice made him turn. "Show me," he said. The display zoomed in, revealing a faint blip on the edge of the map. It was small at first, barely visible. But the data beside it was strange. It had no identification code. No transponder signal, no origin tag. It was moving fast, and far too fast. "What's its speed?" Ryan asked. The officer hesitated. "It's increasing, sir. It's accelerating every second." Beyond engine limits, Ryan's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. No ship can maintain that kind of thrust." The station's systems began to hum louder as more power was routed to the scanners. The blip grew brighter, closing the distance between itself and Imperial space. The data stream filled with red warnings. Radiation unknown. Drive signature unreadable. Composition unclassified. "Get the fleet on standby," Ryan ordered, his voice low, and informed Central Command. "We have an unidentified object approaching fast." The bridge filled with tension. Officers whispered, unsure if this was an invasion, a natural event, or something far worse. In all Imperial history, no one had seen readings like this. The object didn't come through any known gate or lane. It simply appeared out of nowhere. As if born from the void itself, minutes passed. The signal's speed kept rising. Its trajectory was straight. No drift, no deviation. It was heading directly toward the Empire's capital region. "Maybe it's a probe," one technician said nervously. "Some ancient debris picked up speed." Ryan shook his head. "Debris doesn't adjust course, and it doesn't increase velocity." The officer who first saw the reading whispered, "Sir, what if it's them?" Ryan frowned. "Them?" "The humans," the officer said, lowering his voice. "The ones from the old wars. The ones who vanished." For a moment, silence filled the command room. Everyone knew the legends, how the humans fought like demons, how they refused to surrender even when outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The Empire's ancestors claimed victory, but the records were unclear. Some said humanity was destroyed, others said they disappeared beyond the stars. Ryan dismissed the idea. "Those are myths. Boy, humanity's gone, there's no way." Before he could finish, alarms blared, the scanner board turned crimson. The object had just broken every known speed record. It wasn't using warp or slipstream. It was simply moving, through real space, faster than anything alive or mechanical should. "Distance to border?" Ryan barked. 200 million kilometers, closing fast, estimated time to entry at 5 minutes. 5 minutes? Ryan stood, disbelief written across his face. "That's impossible. Are our sensors malfunctioning?" "All systems reading clean, Commander," another officer replied. "It's real. Outside, through the massive glass window, the void remained still. Yet everyone on the station could feel it. The quiet hum of tension crawling under their skin. Something was coming, something unknown. Ryan activated the emergency channel. "This is Commander Ryan of Border Station 9 Theta. We have a high-velocity unidentified object inbound. No ID, no origin. Trajectory direct to Imperial core. We are initiating red alert," his message repeated across the network, echoing from relay to relay until it reached the Imperial command. Inside the station, lights turned crimson. Defense systems armed, but deep down everyone knew it wouldn't matter. The blip grew brighter on the hologram, now pulsing like a heartbeat. The speed readings stopped updating because they had gone beyond the computer's limits. The display froze for a moment before flickering back to life. "The system labeled the object simply as unknown, sir." "It's emitting something," said the comms officer. Low-frequency bursts, not in any known pattern. Translate it, Ryan ordered. We can't. It's old like a forgotten dialect. The lights dimmed as the power grid strained. And then, for a brief second, every screen in the station turned black. When they came back online, the word appeared across every console, every display, even across personal data pads. We return. Ryan's blood ran cold. No one spoke. The object had just entered Imperial space, moving like a comet of silver light. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Empire remembered what fear felt like. Far away from the border, deep inside the shining heart of the Imperial capital, the Grand Council was already awake. The golden towers of the city reflected the light of 3 suns, but the chamber inside was filled with shadows. 12 beings sat around a circular table made of crystal, each one a ruler of entire worlds. Their faces were old, wise, and full of fear. The news had traveled fast. The signal from Border Station 9 Theta had reached them only moments ago, but already the report was spreading like wildfire through the command networks. An unidentified ship had entered Imperial space faster than any known vessel. No identification, no contact, no warning. High Chancellor Varen stood at the center of the room, his scaled hands trembling slightly as he replayed the message. On the holographic screen, the last words from Commander Ryan echoed again. Unknown object inbound, accelerating, message received. We return. The word sent a chill through the room. Who dares to enter our territory without permission? One counselor shouted, his voice trembling more than he wanted to admit. Activate the Grand Fleet, destroy it before it reaches our inner systems, but the Science Minister, a tall being with silver eyes, raised her voice. Destroy what? We don't even know what it is. It defies physics. It appeared from nowhere, and our instruments cannot identify its power source. Another counselor leaned forward, his long fingers tapping nervously on the table. You think it's human, don't you? He said quietly. The others turned toward him, the word human hanging in the air like poison. Farine's expression darkened. That's impossible, he said firmly. Humanity was erased 1,000 years ago. Their worlds burned. Their fleets shattered. The defense marshal shook his head. And yet, Chancellor, our archives are incomplete. The records of that war are sealed. No one alive has seen the full truth. Perhaps they were not destroyed. Perhaps they went somewhere we could not follow. A tense silence fell across the chamber. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, though there were no clouds. As if the very air reacted to their fear, the Minister of Information activated a small hologram. It displayed an ancient image, blurry and faded. It showed a human soldier in primitive armor, standing before the smoking ruins of an alien citadel. The caption beneath it read, The Fall of Karis. This was the last image ever recorded of humanity, she said softly. Before the Great Silence, they were dangerous, said another counselor. Relentless, unpredictable, emotional to the point of madness. That's why our ancestors feared them. Yes, the science minister whispered, but they were also creators. They built worlds from nothing, healed planets we thought dead. They were chaos, but also life. Varen slammed his hand on the table. Enough talk of myths. We are the Empire now. We rule the stars. No one threatens us. But even as he spoke, the lights in the chamber flickered. Every hologram blinked off for a single heartbeat. When they returned, the central display now showed a single new message. Not from any known source. Signal detected. Approaching object entering mid-space near Core Route 12. The Council froze. The unknown ship had already crossed half the galaxy in less than an hour. That's impossible, Varen whispered. Not even our fastest cruisers could do that. The defense marshal barked orders. Send fleets Theta and Omega to intercept, deploy drones. Activate the barrier network, a young aide rushed in. Breathless, sir, the barrier network isn't responding. It's as if something is blocking the signal. Varen turned to the science minister. Can it be some kind of stealth technology? She shook her head slowly. It's more than stealth. It's as if the ship isn't really here. And yet it is. It bends sensors, bends gravity, bends logic. The oldest member of the council, a creature made of pale light, finally spoke. His voice was slow, ancient and calm. I have seen this before, he said. In the old archives, before the purge, before your time, everyone looked at him. In the war with humanity, there was a final battle, not written in our official history. The humans unleashed something they called the Echo Drive. It could fold not just space but time itself. Our ancestors destroyed their worlds because they feared that power. And you think this ship, Baron began. The elder nodded. East carries that same power. Or perhaps something greater. The room fell into deep silence again. The counselors could hear their own hearts pounding. They all knew what it meant if the humans had returned. Every empire, every world, every lie built after their fall would crumble. Prepare the Emperor, Baron said finally. He must be told. Outside the chamber, alarms began to echo across the capital. Fleets were moving. Warships awakening from their orbital docks like metallic giants. The skies filled with streaks of light as thousands of engines roared to life. But in the midst of that preparation, one more transmission arrived. It was short, broken, and full of static. But every translator in the room heard the same thing. We come not to conquer, but to remind. Vareen stared at the message for a long time. The others waited for his command, but no words came. His throat felt dry, his voice trapped somewhere between disbelief and terror. At that moment, the unknown ship appeared on the outer sensors of the capital world. It was not large, but it shone like a fragment of a dying star. Every weapon locked on it. Every defense system aimed, but no one fired. They could feel something emanating from it. Not hostility, not aggression, but power, vast and ancient. The Empire had ruled the stars for centuries. Yet in that single heartbeat, everyone, from soldier to emperor, felt small. And as the mysterious vessel drifted closer, the Great Council realized a terrifying truth. The galaxy's forgotten legend was no longer a story. It was coming back to life. The order came before dawn reached the spires of the imperial capital. The Emperor himself had spoken. His words echoed through every command station, every fleet channel, and every soldier's heart. Mobilize the armadas. No unidentified force shall trespass within our dominion. Within minutes, the galaxy's largest military machine came alive. Massive hangars opened like blooming metal flowers. Star destroyers rose from their docks, their hulls shining in the pale glow of orbiting moons. Hundreds of smaller ships followed, forming waves of steel across the void. The Empire had never prepared for peace, only for domination. But in their hurry, they forgot one truth. Fear always moves faster than ships. Across communication lines, panic spread like fire. Civilians fled from outer colonies. Governors locked down transport gates. Trade routes went dark. Rumors whispered that the returning object carried an ancient vengeance. That the humans were back from the dark beyond. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Solinar, Admiral Chiron watched the fleet status flicker across his displays. Thousands of ships reported ready, but something about it all felt wrong. The data from the border had been clean, precise and terrifying. No ship, no technology. Not even the Empire's best drives could reach such velocity. And yet this thing had. Chiron stood tall, his uniform crisp, but his eyes betrayed the weight pressing on him. He had fought many wars, crushed rebellions, destroyed planets in the Emperor's name. But this was different. This was not an enemy that sought conquest. It was an unknown that defied logic, Admiral, said his second officer. The ship has slowed down near the core route, but it's not stopping. It's maintaining a steady course toward the capital. Chiron frowned. Has it sent any communication? No, sir, just background radiation, no patterns we can decode. Position our interceptors ahead of it. If it resists, disable it. If it cannot be disabled. Chiron hesitated, the words feeling heavier than before. Destroy it. The fleet adjusted formation. Thousands of warships moving in perfect symmetry. Like a single organism preparing to strike. Their weapons charged, energy fields glowed bright blue. The entire region of space shimmered as countless engines roared. Then suddenly the unknown ship stopped. Every radar froze, every sensor line flatlined. It was as if the ship had vanished. For a moment the fleet hung in silence. Confusion spreading through the ranks. Then, without warning, the ship reappeared closer, much closer. It had crossed 100,000 kilometers in a blink, without any trace of movement. Impossible, whispered the sensor officer. It moved without displacement, sir. No energy surge, no jump signature. It just shifted. Chiron's voice was calm but hollow. Lock all weapons. Target that vessel. The order spread through the command network. Across thousands of ships, turrets rotated. Targeting computers locked on. But as soon as they did, every targeting system failed. The screens filled with static. The control panels flickered. and the fleet's AI core shut itself down. What's happening? Kieran shouted. Unknown interference, sir. The ship's emitting a frequency that's rewriting our systems. It's overriding command protocols all across the fleet. Lights dimmed. Weapon systems went offline. Gravity fields fluctuated. Even the artificial sun above the capital flickered for a brief moment, plunging the golden city into eerie twilight. Then the ship spoke, a voice deep and calm, filled every comm channel, every speaker, even the private communication implants within the officers' skulls. Empire of chains, you have forgotten what mercy is. Kieran froze. The voice was not alien. It was human, clear, firm, filled with purpose. You built your power on the ashes of the innocent. You erased names, histories, and truths. We return not for conquest but for memory. The message ended. The silence that followed felt heavier than the void. Kieran gritted his teeth. We will not bow to ghosts. Signal planetary command was deploy ground batteries. Prepare for orbital strike. But even as he spoke, the stars shifted again. The unknown ship divided into hundreds of smaller fragments. Drones, each one glowing faintly like shards of light. They spread across the fleet in absolute silence, attaching themselves to the hulls of Imperial ships. Admiral, they're not attacking, the officer said. Voice shaking. They're repairing something. What? Kieran barked, turning toward the viewport. Outside, his own flagship's hull began to mend itself. The old scars from previous wars vanished. Broken panels restored and power levels stabilized. The human drones weren't destroying, they were restoring. The science officer's voice came through. Stunned. Admiral, it's impossible. They're stabilizing our failing reactors. They're saving us. For a moment, no one spoke. The entire bridge stood frozen as the realization sank in. The unknown ship had disabled their weapons, not to harm them, but to stop them from self-destruction. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the drones withdrew. The ship pulsed once, and a new message appeared on every screen. Fear ends where understanding begins. And with that it turned away, slowly, calmly. Continuing its path toward the capital, Kieran sank into his chair. The universe had changed and he knew it. The Empire had just met something beyond their comprehension, a power that could destroy them in a breath. Yet chose to help them instead. Send a report to the Emperor, he whispered. Tell him the unknown ship ignored our might, and showed us mercy instead. Outside, the stars flickered like watchful eyes. The fleet followed, silent and uncertain. As the mysterious vessel continued on its course, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire's soldiers realized that the most terrifying force in the galaxy was not hate, it was compassion. The unknown ship drifted closer to the Imperial capital, its silver hull reflecting the light of 3 suns. Yet it made no sound, no broadcast, no demand. It simply existed, calm, unmoving, unstoppable. All across the world below, the Empire held its breath. Cities went silent. Streets emptied and people gathered on rooftops to stare at the sky. The Imperial citizens had never seen such stillness. They had seen parades of warships, invasions, and conquests, but never this, a single vessel, motionless, commanding the attention of billions. Inside the Imperial palace, the Emperor stood at the grand window of his chamber. His reflection trembled in the glass as the strange light from orbit shimmered through the clouds. He was old, proud, and feared by all. Yet at that moment he felt smaller than a grain of dust. Behind him, the High Chancellor and the Defense Marshal waited for orders, but none came. The Emperor's voice was a whisper. Why does it not strike? Perhaps it is broken, the Marshal suggested weakly, or waiting for us to act. The Emperor turned, eyes burning. It has disabled an entire fleet without firing a weapon. Does that sound broken to you? No one answered. Suddenly, every screen across the capital flickered. From the smallest communicator to the largest public display, all went black. Then a single image appeared. Not a warning, not a face, but a flag. It was tattered, burned at the edges. Floating in the void, a blue world behind it. A single white moon above, every being on the planet stared in silence. For most, it was just a strange symbol, but for the oldest among them, for those who remembered the forbidden stories, it was unmistakable. The flag of humanity. The Emperor's heart tightened. He remembered his ancestors' secret words, how the humans had vanished, not destroyed, but lost, and how their return would mark the reckoning. What do they want? The Chancellor whispered, revenge? Justice? The Emperor stared at the flag as it slowly rippled in the void. Maybe they want us to remember, he said, voice trembling. Outside, the unknown ship moved again, but not toward the city. It descended slowly toward the orbital defense ring, every cannon locked on it, every missile ready to fire. The marshal raised his hand to give the order, but before he could, the ship stopped. Hovering just meters away from the defense network, a low vibration echoed through the planet's surface, gentle but vast. It was not sound, but resonance, a frequency that reached into every machine, every living mind in homes and towers and factories. Holographic screens shimmered to life. Each showed a single figure, human in shape. Face hidden behind light, eyes calm, the voice came again. Clear and deep, empire of iron and silence. You forgot the cost of fear. Every being who heard it felt their pulse slow, as if time itself bent to the sound. We do not seek to destroy you, but to remind you, there was a time when your worlds burned. Not from hate, but from arrogance. You called it victory. We called it extinction. The image faded, leaving only the star flag once more. In the control room of the palace, officers shouted over one another. It's infiltrating our networks, Emperor. It's broadcasting across every frequency. The Emperor clenched his fists. Then let it, perhaps the truth is long overdue. Outside, the great defense ring powered down. Each turret folded, each reactor cooled, not by command but willingly, as if the machines themselves refused to fight. The marshal slammed his fist on the table. They're rewriting our systems, sir. Our own weapons are surrendering. The Emperor turned toward the darkened screen, whispering more to himself than anyone else. Maybe they learned what we never could, to win without war. Above the capital, the unknown ship opened like a blooming star. Panels unfolded, releasing waves of light that rippled across the sky. Every cloud turned silver. Every ocean mirrored the stars. The people below gasped as the night became bright as dawn. But no attack came, no explosion, no fire, only silence. For 3 full minutes the galaxy held its breath, then, from the center of the light, small fragments drifted down, glowing like falling stars. They touched the ground softly, dissolving into air and wherever they landed. Dead soil came alive again, plants blooming instantly, broken machines reactivated, cities brightened. A message scrolled across every surface once more. Mercy is not weakness. It is strength remembered. The Emperor sank into his throne, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on him. They could have ended us, he said quietly. Yet they heal. The Chancellor's voice trembled. Then what do we do now? The Emperor lifted his gaze to the heavens where the ship hovered like a silent god. We watch, we listen, and we remember. Outside, the vast vessel began to turn, its engines glowing faint blue, but before it left orbit, a single beam of light shot toward the palace, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. It formed the shape of a human hand. Open and extended, the Emperor rose slowly, walked to the window and raised his own trembling hand in return. In that single moment, the greatest empire in the galaxy bowed, not to power, but to understanding, and as the human ship drifted away, the stars themselves seemed to whisper, reminding all who watched that even in silence, humanity's voice could shake the universe. For a long while after the beam of light faded, the galaxy remained silent. The unknown ship hung above the imperial capital like a second moon. Unmoving yet alive, its hull shimmered faintly, reflecting the clouds, the oceans, and the countless terrified eyes staring upward. Then, without warning, the darkness of space around it rippled one by one. Shadows emerged from the void, enormous, graceful shapes that blotted out the stars. Dozens of vessels appeared, then hundreds, spreading out in perfect formation. Their outlines were strange, part machine, part living light. Their design was unlike anything seen in millennia, but at their core, unmistakably human. Every imperial sensor screamed with new readings. The fleet was vast, ancient, and beautiful. The humans had not returned with warships of fire and steel. They had returned with something far beyond comprehension. On the bridge of the imperial flagship Solinar, Admiral Chiron stood frozen, watching the sensor feed. It's not just one, he whispered. It's an entire armada. Beside him, his science officer stammered, their energy output is stable. Sir, but their signatures are impossible. They carry star-core drives. Each could power a sun, yet they emit no radiation. They're clean, pure. Chiron couldn't look away. The flagship at the center was colossal, larger than any dreadnought ever built by the Empire. Its surface glowed with streams of living metal that pulsed like veins. At its bow was a symbol, burned yet proud, a human hand reaching toward a star. Messages exploded across the Imperial network. Every world, every colony, every outpost received the same transmission. To those who inherited the ashes, we are not your enemy. We are humanity. The forgotten architects of your dawn. Across the capital, every being froze. The words were calm, not threatening. Yet they carried a weight that pierced every heart. The Emperor watched from his chamber. He felt old and small. The stories his ancestors had buried were breathing again. He whispered, "They were real and they've come home," the human voice continued, echoing across all frequencies. "We left this galaxy when mercy became weakness, when unity became control, and when power became faith. We returned not for conquest, but to restore what was lost." The Imperial defense systems remained powerless. But no attack came. Instead, the human fleet began to release light. Hundreds of beams descended toward the planet's surface, touching the soil, the oceans, the skies. The light was soft and golden, spreading warmth wherever it reached. In the wastelands beyond the capital, barren plains suddenly turned green. Rivers long dried by war began to flow again. In the mining colonies, machines long broken for centuries came back to life. Across the Empire, dying worlds started to heal. Citizens knelt in disbelief. They had been raised to see humans as monsters, destroyers, demons of chaos. But now those same beings were rebuilding what their rulers had destroyed. Inside the palace war room, the High Chancellor turned to the Emperor, his voice unsteady. "We enslaved thousands of worlds. We silenced entire races, and now they come not to punish, but to save." The Emperor stared at the light streaming through the windows. "Perhaps that is why we feared them," he said quietly. "Because they became what we could never be." Meanwhile, on the Solinar, Admiral Kieran watched one of the human ships approach. It was enormous, glowing with silver lines, yet it moved with the grace of a falling feather. Then, without warning, a transmission came directly to his bridge. A hologram appeared, a figure in a simple black uniform. Human. The face was calm, weathered, and strong, eyes bright with ancient sorrow. "Admiral of the Empire," the figure said, "your people have not been forgotten. The stars remember every act, both cruel and kind. We come to heal the wounds left behind. But the healing must start with truth." Chiron swallowed hard. "What do you want from us?" The figure smiled faintly. "Not submission. Not worship, only memory, tell your Emperor. The age of fear is over. The age of remembrance begins." The hologram vanished, leaving the bridge in silence. Chiron turned toward his crew. "Do as they say, stand down. All ships to passive mode across the fleet." The order spread, weapons powered down, shields folded, and silence returned. But this silence was not born from terror. It was awe on the ground. People wept openly, watching their skies glow with human light. They felt warmth for the first time in generations. Not from their sons, but from compassion. At the palace, the Emperor stood before the window again. His voice trembled as he spoke to the empty air. "You could have burned us, but you chose to forgive. Why?" And though no answer came, deep in his heart he knew. Humanity had evolved beyond vengeance. Beyond fear, they had become something greater. Above, the human fleet shifted again, forming a vast circle around the planet. In its center, the lead ship opened, revealing a pulse of light so bright it reached beyond the Empire's borders. Through that light, a message spread to every corner of the galaxy. "The lost children have returned, not to rule, but to remind you, you are more than the darkness you became." The Emperor sank to his knees as the light washed over him. His crown fell, forgotten. For the first time in his reign, he felt peace, and as the human fleet hung above, silent and unmoving, the entire galaxy realized a truth that would echo for ages. Humanity had not come back to destroy empires, they had come back to awaken souls. For centuries, fear had been the Empire's greatest weapon. It ruled not by love, not by justice, but by terror. Every child was raised to believe that obedience meant survival, and mercy was weakness. Yet now, with the human fleet shining above their skies, that ancient fear began to crumble. Across the capital, crowds gathered in silence. Faces once hardened by suspicion now softened with wonder. The air felt different, lighter, warmer, alive. The light from the human ship still poured down like a gentle rain, washing away the shadows of empire. In the lower districts, the workers who had lived their whole lives underground stepped out into the open. They looked up for the first time, seeing stars through the gaps in the clouds. Their voices trembled as they whispered, "Is this what freedom looks like?" In the minds of Varnus III, the enslaved laborers felt the chains around their wrists turn to dust. The metal simply dissolved. Leaving their skin unmarked, machines stopped working. Not in revolt, but in peace, for the first time in generations. The miners saw daylight without overseers shouting commands. Reports flooded the palace, entire sectors awakening as if the galaxy itself remembered how to breathe. Admiral Kieran watched from orbit. His fleet stood powerless, weapons silent, but no one spoke of war anymore. Officers who once boasted of glory now stared at the glowing ships in awe. "Sir," one of them whispered, "our people are kneeling not because they're afraid, but because they're grateful." Kieran nodded slowly. "Then let them, for once in our history. Fear does not rule." Inside the imperial palace, the emperor sat alone in his chamber. The crown that once symbolized absolute power lay forgotten beside him. His reflection in the glass showed not a ruler, but a man burdened by ghosts. A soft chime echoed through the hall. The holographic image of the human emissary appeared again. The same calm figure cloaked in light. "Emperor of the stars," the human voice said gently. "Your reign was born from fear, but fear cannot build eternity. It only delays the fall." The emperor bowed his head. "If you came for vengeance, I would not resist." The figure shook its head. "We came for truth. We watched as your people forgot the meaning of being alive. We will not destroy you, we will set you free." And then the light spread, moving beyond the capital, beyond the empire's borders. Entire fleets shut down as if lulled into rest. Slave collars across distant worlds disintegrated. Hidden prisons opened. Forgotten colonies reawakened. In one of those far systems, a small child lifted his hand toward the sky as the light touched his face. He had never seen color before, never felt warmth. Tears fell, and he whispered the word the older ones had feared to say. "Humans," the word echoed through countless mouths, whispered, sung, shouted. It became a prayer of hope, not horror. Meanwhile, deep within the Emperor's command network, something unexpected happened. The central AI, a cold machine built to control billions, began to speak in a new voice. It said, "Directive 1 rewritten, serve life." Then, every machine under its command followed, rebuilding instead of destroying. The High Chancellor ran into the throne room breathless. "My Emperor, our systems, they are healing themselves. The old corruption is gone." The Emperor looked out the window at the golden light blanketing the world. "Then so must we," he said quietly, from orbit. Admiral Kieran watched something astonishing. The human flagship projected a beam toward the galactic core, a stream of energy so vast that it reached systems thousands of light years away. Each world touched by it began to glow, not with destruction but with renewal. Barren moons grew forests, oceans formed from dust, and cities rebuilt themselves in silence. Kieran's voice trembled as he whispered to himself, "They're fixing what we broke." The human fleet moved gracefully, not as conquerors but as guardians. Their formation looked like a living constellation, a new pattern written into the heavens. Every alien species watching across the galaxy saw it. Every ruler who once mocked the idea of mercy now felt small before it. In the center of all that light, the human voice returned one last time, resonating through space. "To the children of the stars, your age of fear ends today. The fire that once consumed you will now guide you. Remember who you were meant to be." The transmission ended, but its echo lingered in every heart on the ground. The people began to help one another instinctively, without orders, without fear. Guards opened cages, merchants gave food freely. Strangers embraced the Empire's laws. Once carved in stone were now dust beneath their feet. The Emperor watched all of it unfold. "So this is how empires die," he murmured. "Not in fire, but in forgiveness." And above, the human fleet shimmered like dawn. Preparing to leave, their mission was done. Their return had not been to rule, but to remind. When the last beam faded and the stars reclaimed the sky, the galaxy felt reborn. The old banners of tyranny fell, replaced by quiet laughter, by peace, by something new that no one had words for. And as the people looked up, searching for the departing lights, they swore they could still hear a faint human whisper carried across the void. "Fear is a choice, hope is forever." When the human fleet finally began to fade, the galaxy held its breath. The skies that had glowed with golden light now shimmered softly with the echoes of their passing. One by one, the massive ships turned toward the edge of the stars, their engines leaving trails of silver across the black. No sound, no farewell, just peace. From the imperial capital to the farthest colonies, beings of every kind watched in silence. None dared to speak. It was as if the universe itself bowed to the moment. In the emperor's palace, the old ruler stood at his window. The crown still lay on the floor where he had dropped it, forgotten. He watched as the last human vessel disappeared beyond the clouds, and for the first time in his long life he smiled, not with pride, but with understanding. The High Chancellor entered quietly. "They're gone, Your Majesty," he said, voice trembling. The emperor nodded. "No," he whispered. "They are not gone. They have simply gone home." Far above, where the human flagship had once hovered, a faint light began to grow again. A beacon, small yet impossibly bright. It pulsed gently, rhythmically, sending a pattern of light across space. Every observatory, every ship, every wandering traveler could see it, and soon the message translated itself in every known language. Do not fear the unknown. Fear forgetting what you are. Across the galaxy, that phrase became sacred. It was carved into city walls, sung in temples, whispered in dreams. The humans had not left monuments or weapons, only words, words that turned hearts. Months passed, then years, and the world that had once lived in chains began to change. The imperial banners were lowered, not by rebellion but by choice. The old government dissolved, replaced by councils of worlds where all species shared a voice. Even the machines that once obeyed cruel orders now served willingly, rebuilding cities and healing the lands they had scarred. In the capital's grand plaza, a statue rose, not of the emperor, not of soldiers, but of a human hand reaching toward the stars. Around its base were inscribed the final known words of humanity. Mercy is the strength of the brave. Children played beneath that statue, unaware of the fear that had once ruled their parents. Farmers worked fields that bloomed again. Pilots flew through starlit skies once guarded by cannons, and in the quiet corners of every world, stories of the humans became bedtime tales, not of terror, but of hope. Admiral Chiron retired to the mountains beyond the capital. He built no monuments, sought no honors. He often sat beneath the night sky watching for any sign of the fleet. "They'll come again someday," he would say to the wind, "when we forget why they came." Sometimes when the wind was right, he thought he heard the faint hum of an engine, far beyond the clouds, but maybe it was only memory. The emperor, now old and weary, walked among his people without guards. They no longer bowed or trembled, they smiled. He saw laughter where once there had been silence, kindness where there had been fear, and he realized that the humans had not just changed the empire, they had changed the meaning of power itself. Before his death, he ordered one last decree. Let no one rule through fear again. Let every world remember the light that healed us. After he was gone, the people kept his words, not through force but through choice. Generations later, scholars studied the human return, trying to understand how they had moved across time, how their ships had defied all laws, yet none could explain it. The closest anyone came was a poet from a distant moon who wrote, "They did not bend the stars, they taught the stars to feel." And so, the galaxy lived, healed, and grew under the quiet watch of the beacon the humans had left. It pulsed eternally, steady and patient, a heartbeat in the dark. Every 1,000 cycles its light grew stronger for one single night, filling the skies of every world with a soft blue glow. The people called it the human dawn, a reminder that somewhere, out there, beyond the edges of the known universe, the creators still watched. And in those moments of light when the galaxies aligned and the old signal hummed again, it carried one final whisper. Soft, endless, and kind. We were here. We remember. And so should you. The stars glimmered brighter for a heartbeat, then settled once more, and the universe continued, not in fear, not in darkness, but in peace.